And okay, so we've talked about our ARPOs. We're working with sellers. So we've talked about our ARPOs. We talked about our MOG. And we talked about our lead-based paint and how we have to comply with each of them. I hope what you guys heard, the importance things is the importance of documenting, making sure that any of these conversations with substances, no matter who we're talking to, is well documented. And encouraging our clients to be in compliance with the various acts, Property Disclosure Act, and then the Lead-Based Paint Act. So we're going to go back to Unit 9 now. I do have a little bit more jumping around to do. Remember what we said yesterday? The two main chapters to focus on is 8 and 9. So that's where the bulk of it comes from. We just have to go to other chapters to kind of get some information, and we're going to be skipping around just a bit. But back to Chapter 9. We're on page 237, and we're talking about verifying the acreage of the lot. My digital users, we are still under the category of working with sellers. So under that category of working with sellers, particularly, we are verifying the acreage of the lot. So when it comes to knowing the acreage of the lot, we are not expected to measure the land. How we get that information? Well, ideally, if the seller has a survey that they're willing to share for us, that's the best place to go. We can go to GIS, get tax records. Just y'all use those with a grain of salt. Not all tax records are accurate, so I would even go over those with the seller if that's your source, and make sure that there's no discrepancy from what they thought was their acreage or lot size. However, although we're not expected to go out and measure land, that's a good job for an appraiser. While we're not expected to go out and measure land, we do need to know how to convert square footage to acres and acres to square footage. Who remembers that magic number? What's that magic number that allows me to convert square feet to acres, acres to square feet? Surely one of you remembers. Nobody remembers? Magic number. There it is. 4 little old ladies driving 35 and a 60. Have you guys ever heard that before? 43,560. Every single acre has 43,560 square feet. We may need first to find the square footage and then convert that number. So let's go over just kind of briefly. When I'm solving for square foot, my basic formula, is length times width equals square feet. We're going to talk a little bit more about this when we measure a house in just a minute. But when we're trying to find square feet, my basic formula says length times the width. L times W is what I'm saying there. When we're talking about land, we're using the same formula, but we tend to use a different verbiage. Instead of saying length times width, it's not uncommon when we're talking about land and lot dimensions to say front foot times depth. So let's look at these terminologies and see what we're talking about. So you have a tract of land and there's a road that runs in front of the tract of land. When you're referring to the front foot of the property, the front foot is the area that runs parallel to the road. The front foot of the land is that runs parallel with the road. The depth of the lot then is how deep is it? How far back does it go? So if you were to stand on the land with your back to the road, you're looking at the depth. You're looking at how deep it is. So we would take our dimensions, length times width, and that gives us our square footage. We're also going to, as I said, in practice, and I think we do see this on practice, know how to convert square feet to acres. And we're going to use that using our magic number 43,560. So let's say, for example, that you're working with a tract of land. You're working with a buyer that's buying a tract of land, and you look at the survey or you go to the tax records and you found the front feet is 250 and the depth is 300. I'm just kind of making numbers up as we go. So your length is 250. Gosh, this is going to be a short. Hang on, let me fix that. That's going to not be a big tract of land, is it? Let's say, well, I guess that would be bad. This is the problem with making stuff up on the fly. Hang on. Let's just say 25. Let's say 500. All right. So your front foot is 500. Your depth is 350. Length times width tells us how many square feet are in this tract of land. You guys got your phones on you or a calculator nearby? So I've given the length and the depth, and we can find out that the square feet of this tract of land
$175,000
is
square foot.
175,000 square feet. So everybody good? We took 500 times 350, and we got 175,000 square feet. If we were to take square feet and divide it by our magic number of 43,560, we take square feet, we divide it by 43,560, we get
4.
a little over 4 acres. So we took our square feet. First, we had to find our square feet, which if you have the survey, you have the lot dimensions. So we first took our square feet, 175,000, found it, and then we divided by our magic number. And so we determined that this tract of land, this lot of land, is 4.017 acres. You're not tested on this math in this class, but I do think this is math that we use. I tell y'all what, you want to blow your buyer away when you're standing there and they say, well, this says 500 and 350, but I wonder how many acres it is. Whip your calculator out, figure out the square footage, and then divide it by our magic number and let your buyer know it's a little over 4 acres if it's not advertised. It'll blow their mind that you know how to do that. Conversely, then, if you were given the acres, let's say a different problem tells us that there's 3 acres. We know there's 3 acres, and your buyer looks at you and says, how many square footage is that? I wonder if you know. If we're given the acres and we want to find the square feet, now we just multiply by our magic number of 43,560. And I get 130,680 square feet. So what I'm telling you guys, to go from square feet to acres, you divide. To go from acres to square feet, you multiply. All knowing that magic number, 43,560. Any questions? You guys got this written down? Do you feel like you could work one of these problems if I gave it to you? Well, let's see. Share with me in a private chat how many acres are in this lot. I think I heard from everybody. 6, 7, 8. Okay. So you're showing a property that's on a lot that measures 225 by 450. How many acres? So first off, we take our length times width to get square feet. So length of 225 times width or front feet and depth, 450, got 101,250. And then to convert to square feet, we just divide by our magic number. And we get 2.32 acres. Questions? That was fun. Let's let you guys do another one. I have a weird sense of fun, don't I? Okay, here's one more. Typo, that's okay. Okay, did I hear from everybody? Okay, so your friend calls and says they are ready to sell 40-acre tract of land. How many square feet are in this tract of land? So in the previous example, we went from square feet to acres, so we were able to divide. So in this scenario, because we're going from acres to square feet, we're going to multiply. So we know we have 40 acres. Again, that magic number, 43,560. So we're going to multiply 40 times that magic number, which gives us square feet of 1,742,400. So if that helps you guys, you can, feel free to write that down, of course. When you're going from square feet to acres, you divide. When you're going from acres to square feet, you multiply. And for both of those, you need that magic number, 43,560. This is our responsibility when it comes to land, measuring land. Unless you want to go into an appraisal type where they're a surveyor, better yet, I should say a surveyor where they can go out and get the land dimensions. This is all we need to worry about. I have had this come up in practice. I told you guys I do listing inputs for my team, and I'm all the time converting square feet to acres because I think it's important that the buyer sees all of it. So I think if you have this information, again, you're not going to be tested on it, but I do think this is a valuable in practice tool. Questions on square feet to acres, acres to square feet, measuring land or accounting for land, I should say. Okay. Another big piece, our big piece when it comes to measuring something is verifying the square footage of the building. So we're going to talk about residential square footage. We will touch briefly on commercial. We're not going to say much about it at all. We're going to look at your little yellow book. This is one of your homework assignments. So I'll be able to release one of your homework assignments by the time we get through with this. First off, let's all understand the square footage, reporting the square footage, according to the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, is not a material fact. We're not required to disclose the square footage. However, there's the big but. The North Carolina Real Estate Commission says if we do report it, we are responsible for accuracy. Some MLSs in this state require square footage to input your listing. Some MLSs require total heated square footage. Triad MLS is one of them. So if you're here in the triad, at a minimum, to compel with triad MLS regulations, you got to have total heated square footage. Not all MLSs require it, you guys. I taught this class last year. I had a lady from the high country MLS. She was like in the western part of North Carolina where it gets real skinny and we never really think about. She was way over there. And she reported to the high country MLS and she said, it is absolutely baffling to me that you guys report square footage. And I said, well, it's baffling to us that you don't, right? So it's a local trade. It's a local custom thing. What we need to know is that the MLS or the heated square footage is not a material fact, according to the Real Estate Commission. We either need to be out measuring this property ourselves, or we need to hire somebody to measure it for us. If we are hiring somebody to measure it for us, this person needs to have more experience than us. It needs to be like an appraiser, for example. Regardless of who measures, you, the listing agent, are responsible for verifying for the information. So even if you have an appraiser measure it, you're still responsible for what's in MLS. Y'all, there was a disciplinary action a couple months ago. Agent hired an appraiser. Agent looked at the appraisal and said, clearly this isn't right. I'm going to put my own number in there. So they put up what they thought the square footage was in MLS. Lo and behold, the appraiser was right and she was incorrect. She overrode the appraiser. Why? I don't know. If you hire somebody, you got to rely that they know what they're doing. The point here is that we are out getting that information ourselves. Either we're measuring or we're hiring somebody with more experience. We cannot rely on previous tax records, for example, for the total heated square footage. We cannot rely on previous MLS listings. So if the home has previously been listed in MLS and you see the square footage, we can't take that. That's called stealing somebody else's work. So you need to go out and measure it yourself. The seller may look at you and say, oh, this is like 1,500 square feet. I can't rely on that. I need to verify it again myself, either by measuring it or by having somebody else do it. For the most part, buyers and their agent should be able to rely what's listed in MLS. So whatever they tell you in MLS is the square footage, for the most part, we should be able to believe that, unless you have a red, or unless your buyer has a red flag go up. If you guys have any reason to think that this property is not the square footage as advertised, then we have a duty to inspect and learn more about it. Maybe you whip out your measuring tape and measure it yourself real quick. But if your buyer looks at you and says, are you sure this is the square footage? That is a red flag to us. And we're going to help them verify that information. So we're going to look at your little booklet, your measuring Bible, I call it, in just a second. But that thing is handy, and it gives you some great information about measuring, including what counts as total living area, heated area, living area. We can use several interchangeable words. What we're referring to is any space that's intended for human occupancy. And in order for it to count for total heated square foot or total living criteria, it must meet all three of these criteria. Did y'all hear my absolute word there? It must meet all three of these criteria. The space needs to be heated by a permanently installed heating system. Space heaters don't count. Fireplaces do not count. The space needs to be finished with generally acceptable building practices, walls, floors, and ceilings. We're not looking at studs. We're not looking at plywood on the floor. We're not looking at rafters in the ceilings. The space is complete. The booklet tells us that in order for us to count it, it has to have a ceiling height of at least 7 feet. So we have finished walls, floors, and ceilings with a ceiling height of at least 7 feet. The exception to that rule is if you have a finished heated attic space. That attic space may have sloped walls. So as long as the sloped wall is under 5 feet, the bottom of the sloped wall is under 5 feet, then I can count that space. But that's a sloped wall exception. And then the third criteria is it's directly accessible from other living area. You need to be able to walk from finished heating space to finished heating space. The house, the home connects for the heated living space. Let's say, for example, you're taking a listing and there's a finished room over the garage. Maybe there's even, let's call it a finished apartment. It's like a little, studio with a bathroom and a little kitchenette, and they let, the in-laws or the kid or whatever live there. If you access the stairs to that little apartment over the garage, if you have to go through the garage to get to the stairs, you can't count it in the heated living criteria because you had to walk through the unfinished garage and the unheated garage. Does that kind of make sense? Now, can I advertise that there's a finished apartment over the garage? Absolutely. Can I even say the square footage of the finished room over the garage? Absolutely. What I can't do is include it in my total heated square footage. Now, what if the stairs are like in the laundry room, still in the house? You don't have to go through the garage. Now it's directly accessible from another heated finished space. Is making sense? So it's kind of a case by case scenario. Breezeways aren't going to count, for example, any kind of additional room that you have to walk outside to get to. We're always looking for these three things to know when we should count it. We're going to look at some specifics in just a second, but I think one of the bigger problem topics when it comes to measuring, one of the biggest questions I get anyway, is about stairs. So let's say you have the first floor and the second floor, and then connecting the two, you have stairs. Pretend that's even. Stairs actually count on both levels. So we're going to count stairs that are accessible like this. We're going to count stairs from the second floor and the first floor. When it comes to measuring a house, if it meets these three criteria, the general rule of thumb says if you can walk on it, you can count it, assuming it meets this criteria. So when we talk about stairs, in your mind, this visual helped me. In your mind, take the stairs and put them on like a hinge. If you were to fold the stairs up, they fill in the gap of this second floor, right? So we're going to count them on the second floor, but then there's also space still underneath that you can walk on. So generally speaking, with stairs, they're going to count on both levels. Now, if it's an open foyer and you have a space without stairs or anything you can walk on from that's on the second floor, maybe it's an open area and you look down and you're looking straight at the first floor. Obviously, you can only count the first floor there because there's nothing to walk on the second floor. So if you have an open space like that and there's nothing to walk on, then you're only counting that one level. In this case, the stairs are kind of acting as on both levels. This gets interesting. Every home is different. Has anybody had the opportunity to measure yet? Not yet? Not yet? Are you guys getting practice? Are you going out with seasoned agents, or is your BIC taking you out and kind of showing you how to measure? Not yet. Okay, good. Well, maybe you can start. I would suggest start by, yeah, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I actually have a question about you mentioned the sloped room,
Mhm.
and if just can I annotate on your screen?
Mhm.
Okay, so if you
Oh,
have,
I don't know if you can. I'm not sure if you can or not. Yeah, you can. Yeah.
So if you have a room that's from one side, it's basically has a more than 7 feet wall, and from the other side, it has like a sloped side, and it goes down, and this is like 4 foot.
It's got, the slope has to be at least 5.
So this has to be 5
Yes.
to be
The bottom
counted.
of the slope. The bottom of the slope.
I got you. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep, of course. I think you guys, I don't think it's a bad idea for you guys to hook up with an experienced agent, a seasoned agent in your office. Say, hey, when you get a listing, will you let me come with you and observe? Will you let me come with you and watch? And they may ask you to hold the dummy end of the measuring tape. What's the dummy end? It's the none without the numbers, right? Because they're going to be responsible for the end with the numbers. But they may let you tag along. And I think that's a great way to get you guys exposed, get you experience. Once you guys get your own listing, I would suggest asking somebody to come with you. Now they're holding the dummy end, you're reading the tape, but at least you have some experience. And guys, every house is different. So just because you master measuring this house doesn't mean you got the next one, right? They're all different. I will share this with you guys. The first couple houses you measure, it's going to seem like it takes forever, but be patient and know that you'll get quicker over time. And eventually you'll be able to go out and measure your own listing. Is anybody planning to measuring their own? Or are you guys going to hire somebody? What's the plan? You're going to hire somebody?
I'm thinking of hiring someone first so that I can be there with them and learn. And
right?
maybe next time, can I give it a try with another agent?
There you go. There you go. That's a good plan. Get that learning down. Somebody asked me what I do. I joined a team that has somebody that does this for us. So he is actually a general contractor, and he does our measuring, and he does our pictures. So that's what I do. I have been out with him and measure. I did go follow him when I first got into sales, as he was measuring my listings. And one listing, he wouldn't touch. He made me do the whole thing. And I said, can't you help me? And he said, no, Julie, we have to learn. So, it was a long day, but he was very patient with me, and we got through it. I do go, as Ahmad said, I do go through and kind of go with him, look over his shoulder, because I know if there's any questions that come up, I want to be there with him, that we can get things resolved. So the total heated square footage that goes into MLS is determined by our exterior measurements. So if you're in the triad, or if you're in MLS that requires total heated living area or total living area, at a minimum, you got to do the exterior measurements. Now for this, the recommendation is like a cloth tape, 100-foot cloth tape, and you're going to take the home and you're going to go from corner to corner to corner. We're going to watch a video and look at some pictures in just a second. But let's say you have a piece of the exterior that is not accessible by the outside. So for example, let's say you have a 2-story home and the second story is bigger than the first story. We can measure the first story outside, right? Because we can do so safely. We don't have to get on a ladder. We don't have to try to hurt ourselves. We can measure the outside of the first story. We cannot measure the outside of the second story. I do not want you guys getting on a ladder. I don't. That's not our job. So when we're trying to figure out the total heated square footage of an area that we can't get to on the outside, the rules say that what we need to do then is go inside and measure all the exterior walls. An exterior wall is one where the other side is the outside. Compare that to an interior wall where the other side is another room in the house. So you're going to go through, in this case, the second floor, and you're going to measure the exterior walls, and then you're going to add 6 inches. That accounts for the width of the wall. And that's the safest way that we can get a measurement. Another example might be a basement that's underground. You can't get to it from the outside. So if you can't get to the outside, you go inside and measure, and you add 6 inches. The exception to this rule is if you're measuring a condo. A condo, you always measure inside and do not add 6 inches. Why am I not adding 6 inches for a condo?
It's only the airspace.
Condo owners only own air. They own from wall to wall. So we need to make sure that we not include the thickness of the wall. So if we were to measure this house, there are portions of this house that would not be included in our total heated square footage, right? The garage doesn't count. That little portion of the porch, that doesn't count. So if we're measuring this house, again, we're going to start by measuring the outside. Go outside first, and you measure from corner to corner to corner to corner, 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 something like that. You go outside with your cloth tape and measure from corner to corner to corner to corner. Once you do that, then you have to go inside and deduct, let's do this, deduct the space that doesn't count. So once we get the total heated square footage of the outside, then we go inside and we deduct the garage and we deduct that portion of the porch that doesn't count. Obviously, if you can get through the deck, best to measure that way, but if you got to go around it, then you got to take it out, because these things are not going to be included in the total heated square footage. If you're in an MLS that requires total heated square footage, this is the minimum. This is the minimum. We measure outside and then we go inside and deduct things that don't count.
If it's 2 stories, like this floor plan, and it has another story, let's say, you would multiply that by 2.
Depending if it's, that depends, doesn't it? Because if it's a 2-story that is, you know, a perfect 2-story, pretend that is, then I can multiply by 2. I don't know what's over this garage right now just yet. But in the scenario we just gave, you could have cases where the 2nd story is bigger than the 1st.
Mm.
So I don't want to say, yes, you can always times by 2. Maybe you can times by 2, but then on the 2nd story, the garage is, what's over the garage is a finished space. You know what I'm saying? So possibly, how about that for an answer? Possibly, it just depends on the type of the home, on the lay of the home. This is a good example. This next picture I have for you guys. This is a good example of a 2-story that we can measure the outside and then actually times 3, right? Because we have a 2nd story and we have a basement. Neither one that I can get to from the outside. So all I can measure is outside on the 1st story. You and I don't have to care too much about above grade and below grade. This isn't our responsibility. However, the appraiser does care about above grade and below grade. So while this doesn't affect our perception of value, this may affect the appraiser's perception of value. And I think this is something that we need to prepare our sellers for. The below grade is any part of the property touches earth. So even if this were like on a slope and this side touches earth and this side did not, part of it touches earth. If it touches earth, it's considered below grade. And appraisers, even if it's a nice finished space like this, appraisers tend to think of below grade as having less value than above grade. So again, I think you and I don't need to be concerned about this when we're measuring for our listings, but this absolutely comes up when we're trying to get value from the appraiser. When we look at our guideline, our guidebook in just a second, we're going to see some good stuff. One thing that they talk about, they give us a book, a guideline for converting inches to feet. Inches are one thing, feet are something else. There are 2 different things going on. And in order for us to measure the rooms and break down the room dimensions, should we choose and should our seller want us to, we need to be able to convert inches to feet. How many inches are in a foot?
12.
12.
I see your mouths move. Guess what? Our book is going to teach us something different. The real estate, I know, the real estate commission says that we use our book. We use this booklet as a guideline, and we're going to go through and look at a few things together. So despite whether or not you agree with it or not, if you're measuring a residential property for sale, the real estate commission says that we need to follow what's in this booklet. So what we're going to do now, you guys have this, you got it from an email from Lane. I see a couple of you have the hard copy. Your firm probably provides it. Uh-oh. Are you guys there? Are you guys there? Okay. So Lane sent you an email with it. You also may have gotten it from your firm. I also have it Learn Test Pass for you guys. This one's under the welcome section. So you have the little yellow book, because that's what it is. It's our little Bible. This book is good. And again, the commission says, look, if you're measuring, you need to follow these guidelines. This is how you know how to follow. So it starts off with a little, and I'll let you guys read this stuff. Rules to the agents, if you will. The 4th page of the booklet, here's our living area criteria. So it gives us heated, finished, and directly accessible. Can you guys see this okay? I wish I could see it better. So it tells us, it breaks down what falls under heated, what categorizes as finished. Here's our 7 feet. Ceilings have to be 7 feet, unless for slope ceilings, which need to be 5. And then directly accessible from heated finished space to heated finished space. Also on this same page, they mention above grade and below grade. So it kind of helps us better understand that. Again, for our purposes, if it's finished and permitted, or finished even, I can count it. If it's finished and even unpermitted, I can still count that basement, but I have to disclose that that space is unpermitted, right? So that's all we can count it if it meets the criteria, but we have to disclose. The next page of your little book gives you some specifics. It talks specifically about how do we count, if we can count attics, basements, hallways. There's our stairs. If they meet, then we're going to count it on both levels. If not, then it's not to exceed the area of the opening. Again, can you walk on it? If it's just an open space in the 2nd floor, you can't walk on it. So I have nothing there to count. But if it is a stair descending from the top, then we can count it on both levels. Bonus room, etc. This bit again, I'll let you guys look at this because this is really helpful, but I do want to skip ahead. Mine says page 7. I'm not sure in the book. Well, it's probably 7 in the book too, but maybe 5. It's 5 in the book. Thank you. Calculating square footage. You guys see this? They actually do, and I don't know why, but they actually do square feet in tenths of a foot, not twelfths. So it's tenths of a foot. Do you guys see that? And to make it simple for us, you guys, they give us a conversion. So if you have an inch, we're going to call it a tenth of a foot. If you have 2 inches, it's 20th, 3.25. Do you guys see that? I know our brains, how old were we when we learned there was 12 inches in a foot, right? So that's what's ingrained in us. But this is why they provide this booklet. This is their standard for measuring. And this is how they want us to do it. We'll look at our homework assignment in just a second. I'm going to give you guys a floor plan, and I'm going to ask for the total heated living criteria, and I'm going to ask for the square footage of each room. And so you guys you'll need to refer either to the book that's in your hand right now or what I got here in Learn, Test, Pass for you guys. And you're going to have to convert those inches to feet for the homework assignment. Everybody see that? See where to find it for your homework? Okay. There's also on that page, what is our responsibility? Again, I think this whole book is really important for you guys to go through as you're getting to that part of your career where you're learning how to measure. Let's get you doing it right out the gate, and we don't have to correct things later. One of the best parts about this book, I think, is starting on, this is my page 10. Is this your page 8? I'm seeing the page numbers now. Okay. Starting on page 8, it gives us, and I love this, on one side, you have a design and a floor plan. And on the other side, you have the different dimensions. So the booklet kind of walks you through various, think of these as like worksheets. They walk you through measuring a 1-story with a basement and a carport. It walks you through 2-story with an open foyer. This is an example where we could measure the 1st floor and then say times 2, because look, I don't have a garage to deal with in the 1st floor, do I? That thing is completely separate and on its own. There's a 2-story with a bonus room. Here is split foyer, split foyer. You walk in the front door, you got 2 choices. You go up, you go down. That's all you can do. So it's a 2-story with a split foyer. a tri-level, maybe a split level, depending on what it looks like. So 1.5 stories. So again, it just gives you various designs that you may encounter. Anytime you come across something that's out of your expertise, we have a duty to ask for help. Maybe we find somebody in our office with more experience. You have a general contractor, for example, that has that experience. Maybe you contact an appraiser. I showed a property once. It was an octagon house. It was an octagon. My buyer was a really good friend of mine. My buyer looked at me and she said, Julie, if you had this listing, how would you measure this house? And I said, honestly, I wouldn't. This looks like a great candidate for me to turn over to an appraiser, let somebody with more experience than me come in. My number one question was, how the heck do you vacuum this house? It had so many corners, you know, and I'm like, how do you vacuum this thing? So again, you're going to come across unique designs, we'll call them, that may cause us to encourage you guys to seek help. You know, maybe start with your BIC. If it's out of your BIC's realm, seasoned agent, an appraiser, something like that. So what I want to do now, and I apologize, I need to stop sharing for 1 second. I forgot to hit a button. I got a new button. We're going to watch, where'd it go? We're going to watch a video. But you guys have sound. We're going to watch a video. And this is the Winston-Salem Board of Realtors did a video series, a measuring video series. So it's a 5-part series, but I just have the first part. And they connected with Piedmont Federal Bank. So the Winston-Salem Board of Realtors,
Home Measurement Fundamentals is brought to you.
And Piedmont Federal Bank joint effort, and they came together and created this series of videos. The first video is kind of a full overview of measuring, which is why I want to share it in class. I know it's 8 minutes, it's a little long, but there's some good information in this. And I'm happy to share the link with you guys in the chat on break if you'd like it, so you can have access to it. The rest, videos 2, 3, 4, and 5 are specifically measuring different floor plans. So there's like a ranch with a basement and a 2-story. But again, this first video is just kind of the overview. So let's watch this. I understand it's long, but it covers everything we need to know. And it gives us some description and some good details. So overall, I think they've done a good job. So get comfy.
To you by the Winston-Salem Regional Association of
You guys can hear it
Realtors
okay?
and Piedmont Federal Savings Bank. Any discussion of a home starts with 2 fundamental questions. The first, of course, is, where is it? That question is always closely followed by, how large is it? As you probably know, that's a really important question, and it's the subject of this video series. There are 5 videos overall, with this video tackling the details of what space or square footage should be included. The remaining 4 videos show you how to apply what you will learn in this video to homes of varied construction and architectural styles. There are a number of fundamentals that will impact your work in measuring any home regardless of its style. Let's get started. The valuation of a residential property is directly impacted by the size of the house. Potential homeowners make decisions based on the sizes of homes they are considering. An inaccurate home measurement can lead to a valuation that is wrong and to incorrect decisions being made by potential homeowners who rely on those measurements. No one wants that, of course. Calculating the accurate size of a home requires a disciplined and technical process. The size or portion of a home that matters most is its living area. This is sometimes called heated living area or heated square footage. A clear understanding of what is and is not included within the living area of a home is critical. The living area of a home is the space that will be occupied by the homeowner. As you've probably guessed, the living area does not include all of the space that is under the roof of the home. First off, the living area must be heated with a permanently installed heating system that makes the space suitable for living year-round. Neither a portable heater nor a fireplace is considered permanent heating sources. In addition, the living area must be finished with walls painted and floors covered. The living area must also have a ceiling height of at least 7 feet, except under beams and ducts where the ceiling height must be at least 6 feet 4 inches. When a room has sloped ceilings, such as those often found in bonus rooms and finished attic spaces, the area of a room with a ceiling height of at least 5 feet can be included in the living area of the home, so long as at least half of the room's square footage has a ceiling height of at least 7 feet. The living area must also be directly accessible from other living areas via a doorway, heated hallway, or stairway. If a space within the home is heated, finished, and directly accessible from other living areas, it counts as a living area, and its square footage is included. Questions sometimes arise regarding whether to include a number of special areas and architectural spaces within the living space of the home. Let's run through a number of those now. Assuming that these spaces meet the criteria of heated, finished, and directly accessible from other living areas, then the following spaces can be included within the living area of the home. Attics. Again, if they meet the living area criteria, then they do count. But keep in mind the ceiling height requirements we mentioned earlier. Also, be sure to note that this space is in the attic in the listing notes for the home. Many attics will not meet the living area requirements, but some will. Basements. Remember that the space must be finished, and again, keep the ceiling height requirements in mind, as well as the need to be directly accessible from other living areas of the home. If the basement is included in living space, make note that the space is below grade or is a basement space. Bay window areas. If the space has a finished floor and ceiling height of at least 7 feet, it counts as living area. Bonus rooms, also called finished rooms over the garage, they count. Just keep the ceiling height requirements in mind. Chimney. The space for the chimney base counts as living area if it is located inside the living area. If the chimney base is outside of the living area, then it does not count. If the hearth is included inside the living area, then include the space for the hearth. Stairs. If the stairs connect living area spaces, include the area of the stairs with the area of the floor from which the stairs descend. If the opening for the stairway exceeds the length and width of the stairway, subtract the excess space from the upper floor and include it with the lower floor, regardless of the ceiling height under the stairs. Furnace and mechanical rooms. For simplicity, if these spaces are located within the living area of the home, they are included, even if the living area criteria are not met. Hallways, closets, dormers, offices, storage rooms, and laundry rooms, they're all included if they meet the living area criteria. Spaces within the home that do not meet the living area criteria should not be included within the square footage of the living area, but should be mentioned in the listing data for the home. These would include areas such as unfinished basements, unfinished attics, and unfinished bonus rooms. Decks, balconies, porches, garages, and carports should not be included in finished or unfinished area calculations for the home, but are noted for information purposes. At this point, you have a good idea of what should and should not be included in the living area of the home. Let's take a look at the tools you will use. You will need a few things to complete a home measurement project, including a 100-foot tape measure, a 30-foot retractable tape measure, some graph paper, 10 square graph paper is best where 10 by 10 squares equal an inch, a camera, you can use the one on your phone of course, and a clipboard. A laser distance meter is also helpful and can speed up the process, especially with interior measurements. Homes are measured in feet and tenths of a foot rather than feet and inches, so it is best to get a 100-foot tape with increments in tenths of a foot. Or you can simply convert your measurements into tenths of a foot using conversion tables which can be found online. You may also want to have a screwdriver with you. More on that in a later video. There are apps and software that can be used to aid the measurement process, and many of them are quite good. For our purposes here, we will be demonstrating the measurement and calculation of home spaces without apps or software. If you know how to do the work without those aids, you will be much more proficient if you choose to incorporate those apps into your process. Either way, you'll be doing the measurements manually and thinking through what areas count as living area and what areas do not. In the next video in the Home Measurement Fundamentals series, we'll take what we have learned and use it to measure a ranch-style home with a basement. We'll pay particular attention to the overall process used to correctly measure a home. Later videos in this series will demonstrate the measurement of split level, 1 and 1.5 story, and 2-story homes. We encourage you to watch all 5 of the videos in the Home Measurement Fundamentals series to develop a full understanding of the process used for accurate results. Home Measurement Fundamentals is brought to you by the Winston-Salem Regional Association of Realtors and Piedmont Federal Savings Bank. Live local, bank local.
Okay, so I think that video does a good job of summarizing your book. It's one of these things, the best way for you guys to learn how to do it is just to get out there and do it. So again, once you get listing, have help, volunteer now to help somebody in your firm. Go to the office tomorrow and say, hey, anybody got a listing coming? Can I shadow you? We're going to go ahead and take our break. While we're at break, I just want to show you guys, while we're at break, I'll give you the link to the video that we just watched. So if you want to go back and look at it on your own, but also notice how now that we've watched the first video, the second episode, the 4th episode, I bet you if I scroll down, I can find. So once you get to the first one, then you'll be able to use, you know, Home Measurement Fundamentals, episode 2, episode 3, if you want to go further, you're welcome to. But I'll give you the link to that first video that we watched in class. Also, while we're gone at break, I'm going to give you the PDF of your homework assignment. So when we come back from break, we can discuss what that homework assignment is. Okay, and then we can move on for measuring. Sound good? All right, let's take 10. Let's see, I got 2:34, so let's come back at 2:44, 10 minutes.
Home measurement square footage should be included. Home Measurement Fundamentals is brought to you by the Winston
coming back. Welcome back. Did you guys get the link in the attachment first off in the chat? You guys should have a link to that YouTube channel, and then there should be a PDF. And when you grab the PDF, it looks a little like this. You guys get it? Both? Okay. If for some reason after class you realize you do not have this PDF, please just reach out to me. I'll be happy to reply with it in an email so you guys have it. So this class, we said there's a couple mandatory homework assignments, and spending time with a floor plan is one of those assignments. So this is the floor plan I'm going to have you guys study. I've got some others coming back, so hopefully we can all hear this. For your assignment, I need you guys to tell me the total heated square footage. What would count as total heated? So you don't even have to go from corner to corner to corner. We give you the length and the width of the whole entire property. And then you would just want to come in and deduct the garage pretty much, because that's the part that doesn't count. So whatever part of the garage there that you have included, you know, this little space right here, you may want to consider. And then the second piece of it is to tell me the square footage of the rooms. So how many square feet are in the kitchen? How many square feet are in the living room? How many square feet are in the dining room and each bedroom? If you want to do the laundry room, you're welcome to. But I care more about kitchen, dining room, living room, and the 3 bedrooms. Remember to take your inches and convert them using 1/10 of an inch. So you guys will want to access that conversion table. Guys, I'm not looking for right and wrong. I'm just looking to see that you tried. I'm looking to see that you put some thought in it. You just didn't throw some numbers down on a piece of paper and say, here you go, Julie. I'm looking to see that you put some thought in it. I welcome any of your comments, any of your questions, any of your discussion. I need to have this in my inbox by the time we start class next Sunday. You guys have a whole week. So I need this in my inbox by the time we start class next Sunday. We will go over it next Sunday, but that is the deadline. Again, it's in the chat. If for some reason you can't access in the chat, just shoot me an email. Julie, send me that floor plan. I'll get it right over to you. Questions? Homework assignment number 1. Let me rephrase that. Mandatory homework assignment. Number 1. That's what the commission calls it. Mandatory homework assignment. Everybody good? Okay. So that's that piece of it. This booklet, you guys please note, this booklet is to measure residential. You're not going to be able to measure commercial property the same way. Shanquinta, did you see that PDF attachment in the chat? Did you see that in the chat with the floor plan? And that floor plan is your homework assignment. So by 9 a.m. next Sunday, in my inbox, I need to know the total heated square foot. We need to deduct the garage. And I also want to know the square feet of each room. What's the square feet of the kitchen, living room, dining room, and all 3 bedrooms? Okay, thank you. So the booklet that you have is for measuring residential space. Again, you guys, there's a reason we call this your measuring Bible. For those of you that don't have a copy in your hand right now, you may want to consider getting one. You can go through your firm. You can get them through the North Carolina Real Estate Commission. They're the ones that provide it anyway. Use this as your guide, especially to help you as you're just getting started. Measuring commercial space is different. So back in our book, we're going to go back into Unit 9. And on page 239, it talks about square footage for commercial property. The guidelines that you have is different than measuring commercial. And a big reason for that is a lot of times commercial space is unfinished. So a lot of times when you're looking at buying commercial space, you're looking at steel studs. You're looking at unfinished space. Commercial space can also tend to be undivided. It could be multiple uses. So there's various different ways to measure commercial. If you're multiple methods, I guess. So if you're going into commercial, I know we asked yesterday and nobody said you were, but if you ever decide one day that you want to go into commercial, you're going to need more experience, more training, and a different kind of knowledge to measure that commercial space. Any questions at all on measuring? Another big thing we're going to do with the seller, we're still working with sellers. We haven't even listed the property yet, y'all. There's a whole lot of work that goes into getting it ready. I think some people out there think that listings just magically appear on Zillow and all we did was wiggle our little nose and it just happened. And that's further than the case. There's a whole lot of work that goes into it before the public ever sees it. And another piece that we have to do, another piece we have to work through is helping the sellers determine a reasonable listing price. And how we're going to do that is by doing our comparative market analysis. We will talk about our CMAs in just a second. We as agents do a CMA, comparative market analysis, to help the seller, in this case, determine probable sales price. You and I do not get to say the word value. The appraiser is the one that gets to say value. Unless you are a licensed appraiser, we need to be very careful that we're not looking at a seller saying the value of your home is. What we say when we look at the sellers, the probable selling price. If you're in property management, we can do a CMA for probable lease price. We are going to report this probable selling price in a range. So, Mrs. Seller, I think based on my CMA, your probable selling price is going to be between this and this. How do we decide between where this and this we go? Well, if the home has been updated, if it's in good condition, then we can probably go to the higher end of the range. If it's not had the updates, if it's not in good condition, if they're not willing to do any work to get it ready, then we might be looking at the lower end of the range. There could be other factors that matter as well. We got to take the whole thing into consideration. As you can imagine, when we're preparing these CMAs, we do have to proceed with a standard of reasonable skill, care, and diligence. We need to know, be able to perform these things in a competent manner. Has anybody done a CMA yet? Not yet. A couple of you? Good. Have you guys learned? I could fudge this report. I could make it say anything I wanted to. because we're the ones selecting the criteria. We're the ones that are putting the information in. And I really could have any kind of outcome that I wanted. But is that practicing reasonable skill, care, and diligence? Absolutely not. So we need to perform these things in a competent manner within that reasonable skill, care, and diligence, not just putting any old thing in there, but proceeding with caution. And guys, when in doubt, ask for help. That's why you have a broker in charge. That's why you have peers in your office. Y'all, I've been in it for 21 years. I've been with 3 firms, real estate firms in my years. And I have never, ever witnessed an incident where an agent asks for help and is told, sorry, nobody here can help you. All you got to do sometimes is ask. Your coworkers, your BIC, they're not mind readers. They don't know when you need help. So sometimes we can reach out and ask to make sure we're performing this reasonable skill, care, and diligence. The Real Estate Commission says it is highly recommended that all listing agents do a CMA prior to advising the seller on appropriate listing price. Y'all, there's no rule that says that we must do a CMA. There's no rule out there. The rule says we have to assist the seller in finding an acceptable asking price. If you have another method to do it, my question to you is, what are you doing? How are you getting that information? The commission recommends that we do a CMA but again, if you have another method for helping them determine at that appropriate listing price, there's no rule that says that's what you have to do. The commission does say that if and when we do CMAs, we're not to take shortcuts. We're not to try to skew the numbers to make them come out one way or another. Like I said, that's something I figured out pretty early on with CMA. I can make this report say whatever I want it to, but that's not practicing that reasonable skill, care, and diligence. You could be facing disciplinary action. You could be sued by the new owner. So once again, we're going to skip around in the book. So hold your place in the book. And we're going to go, my digital users, we're heading to chapter 15. I'll show you where in just a second once I find it. My hard copy users, we are on page 514. So 514, if you're in the hard copy, my digital users were in chapter 15 under approaches to value. So we're going to talk about some of the different approaches to value that the appraiser takes to determine value. But we're going to learn that what we do in some cases is similar. It's just the output is different. The appraiser says value and gives it exact number. We say probable sales price and give a range. So the first approach to value that the appraiser takes is called the sales comparison approach. The sales comparison approach that the appraiser uses is the closest thing to our CMA. The theory behind the sales comparison approach is that the probable selling price of the subject property can be found by studying recently sold closed comps nearby. By studying recently sold similar properties nearby, what we know is that a buyer not too long ago was willing to pay this price for that property. And we can use that as a basis to help us put a price on our subject property. So comps are recently sold nearby. Location, location, location is very important in real estate. And we're looking for comparable properties that are most similar to the subject as possible. I'm here to tell you, there's no two properties that are exactly the same. There's differences. So you're not going to find an exact match. We're looking for those that are closest to the subject property. Sales comparison approach is the appraiser's most common method when they're trying to put a value on single family homes. This includes single family dwellings homes. This could also include condos, townhomes, etc. Again, this is the closest thing that we have to our CMA and BPO. So with the sales comparison approach, there's a subject property. The subject property is a property being studied. It's the property that the appraiser wants to determine the value. It's the property that you and I are trying to find the probable sales price. The comparable properties, also known as the comps, are those recently sold properties that we're going to use to compare to help us determine a price for that subject. So when we're studying comps, when we're studying these comparable properties, the comps that we're studying should have sold recently. They say about 6 months is ideal if they closed 6 months ago. In some markets, in some areas, you may need to go back. If you've had a market kind of like we just had where closings have been down, you may not have had a closing in that neighborhood, in that area in the last 6 months. I always start with 6 months and then adjust if need be. So when I'm doing my CMA, I try to find things within 6 months. It should be reflective of the current market conditions. We were just talking about this morning. You know, home prices in general are up, and part of it is due to the current market conditions. Buyers, I hate to say it, but I think buyers are the ones responsible for driving up those values, driving up those home prices, because they were the ones willing to pay more than asking price. So they helped pave this way for this market that we're in now with higher prices. But that's what was typical to this market. And that's what we need to know. This is why we study trends and numbers, and we know what's going on in the market around us. The other thing that we need, the comp should have, it says typical financing. Let's say similar financing. For example, if you have 5 comps and one of those comps is a foreclosure, that may not be the best comp to use. However, if you were trying to do a CMA back in 2010, you had 5 comps, 4 of those comps might have been foreclosure. That was the sign of the time. So what was typical financing? What was the typical market in that time? It was foreclosures and short sales, and we would need to take that into consideration. The suggestion is that we find at least 3 good comps. At least 3 good comps, so we have something to compare. So if you have 4, and like I said, one of them is a short sale, that short sale may not be the best because there's a good indication that there was a lower price because of its condition, because of it being a short sale. We're actually going to talk about short sales too, a little bit about that as well. And when we talked about comps being similar, they should be as similar to the subject. Let's look for similar type, like versus like. 2-story brick compared to a 2-story brick. Is it really fair to compare a 2-story brick to a 2nd-story condo? Would that be a good comp? No, we got several different things, right? So let's do condo to condo, ranch to ranch, townhome to townhome. That's what we mean by type, like versus like. We want properties that are similar age. Was a house built in 1960 built the same way as what we're building today? Absolutely not. Prices were different, products were different, building codes were different. Things were different back in the 60s than what they are today. So we want those similar to age, you know, generally 10, 20 years. I wouldn't go much further apart than that. What's the three most important things about real estate? Location, location, location. Where the property is located is important to help us try to determine a price. You could put, the appraiser could put a value of a home in Winston-Salem, and they could pick that home up and move it to Greensboro. Nothing else changes except for the location. Guess what? You've changed the value. You're not going to have the same value because you've changed the location. This is why we want things as similar or nearby as possible. If you can, keep it in the same subdivision. Maybe you do like a 1/4 mile radius search. Again, it's kind of like a Google search. I start tight, and if I can't find what I'm looking for, then I go out a little bit more, go out a little bit more. Does that make sense? But I tend to start with 6 months, 1/4 mile radius search, and see what I get from there. Again, if I need to go further out, if I need to go back longer, depending on the population of the area, if it's more rural, you may need to go out further than a 1/4 mile. You may need to go out a mile or a mile and a half before you get to another house. If you're downtown and the population is dense, you might be able to stick with that tighter radius search. Size of the property, what's the square footage of the building, and what's the lot size? Those are things we're looking for, something similar. Physical characteristics, man, we could go on and on with these. How many bedrooms? Is there a garage? Is there a fireplace? Is there a porch? Is there a deck? Is there a pool? Is there whatever? We're not going to be able to find, again, exact matches, but we can look for similar features, physical characteristics. What's the condition of property? Do the bathrooms and the kitchens need to be updated? Are they, 20 years old or more? If so, that's going to affect what the home will sell for. What are any nearby amenities? Is there a clubhouse nearby, a membership that they can join? What about how the proximity to transportation, shopping, churches, schools? Date of the sale, again, we're looking for recently sold. 6 months is ideal. It's not always the best way, just depends on the market. And then the condition of the sale. Again, was it a foreclosure? Was it a short sale? If so, we're led to believe that a foreclosure sells less than average homes in that neighborhood. So we would need to take that into consideration. Same thing with a short sale. As we said, we're looking for at least 3 good comps, 3 to 4. 2's not quite enough. 4 to 5 is a lot. So I would say 3 to 4, just depending on the property. When you're a member of an MLS, you'll be able to access the MLS to do your CMAs. Most of our appraisers are members of the MLS, so they have access to this history as well. It's so important that we are, properly putting information in the MLS anyway, but a good reason to do that is so that we all have good comps to use going forward. Good question it comes in. Do we add value if one has a chimney and the other doesn't? Absolutely. That could be something, a physical condition that we can take into consideration. One has a fireplace and a chimney, the other one doesn't. Another good example of those physical characteristics. If you don't have access to an MLS, or for some reason your firm won't join the MLS, then we need to rely on closed property files that we have in our office. Thank you, MLS. Now we don't have to go back through the file room and dig through all these files. How do we fix the price? Well, we could adjust for the account, for the adjustment of a fireplace, for example. Guys, remember, I don't determine value. I can't tell you what the value is of a fireplace. But what I can do is adjust. That's why I have a range too. I can adjust up or down to account for the fireplace. If you want to know the value of a fireplace in this neighborhood, then you would need to contact an appraiser. So yeah, we're getting the previous sales price, property information. Pictures in MLS are oh so helpful, oh so very helpful. Anything that's ever, we got the MLS, I want to say in like 1997, 98, something like that, 2002, somewhere in there. Anything that's ever been in the MLS since day one is still there. So if it's been previously listed, you can go back and do a history search on the property and the comps and get pictures and see what they look like. And we can kind of use the pictures of our comps that closed 6 months ago to help us and the seller see this is the condition of the property when they bought it for this price 6 months ago. Again, I think the more that we can put in, we're helping ourselves. If we put information and pictures in so we can have those comps, so the appraisers can have those comps. So with the appraiser doing the sales comparison approach, the only adjustments made are to the comps. We never ever adjust the subject. The subject is what I'm studying. The subject is the property that I need all others to compare to. So we know what a buyer was willing to pay for comp 1. We know what a buyer was willing to pay for comp 2, comp 3. So we're going to go in and adjust those prices up or down. Again, the appraiser is the one that gets to use the idea of value. We have a very rough estimate. I have no idea the cost of a bedroom. I don't know what a bathroom goes for, but I can study my comps and use that information, not to adjust the price so much, but to help me know if I need my subject property to be more than or less than these properties that I'm studying. So we only adjust the comps to match the subject. Let's take just a second. Let's you guys push back, give yourself some room. We're going to do a little exercise together. I don't want you punching your computer screen. So step back, stand up if you want to, assuming you're decent from the waist down, but otherwise just push back and give yourself some room. This is not my first Zoom class, right? Okay. So I want you guys to take your left hand and make a fist, and I want you to hold it straight out in front of you. That's why I wanted to give you some room. We're going to call this left hand your subject property. And we're going to learn that we're never, ever going to adjust our left hand because we never, ever adjust a subject property. Now I want you to take your right hand and make a fist and hold it straight up over your head. Let's call your right hand comp 1. So you got a subject property and you got comp 1. Let's pretend that your subject property has 3 bedrooms and your comp has 4. Which one has more? Your comp, right? Subject has 3, comp has 4. How do you make your comp match your subject? You deduct the cost of a bedroom. Subject had 3, comp had 4. How do you make a match? Don't adjust your left hand. You take your right hand, you take your comp, and you deduct the cost of a bedroom. Okay, fun little hand trick. Okay, shake your right hand out, your left hand's still up. It's going to go to sleep by the time I'm done with you guys. So your left hand's still out, it's still the subject property. Now take your right hand, make a fist, and hold it down by your side. Now your subject has 3 bedrooms and your comp has 2. Which one has more? Now it's your subject, right? How do you make your comp match your subject? You add the cost of a bedroom. So there's a little hand trick that will get you guys through your homework assignment, because that's what you're going to have to do for your homework assignment and your test. They will tell you the values. They will tell you how much a bedroom's going for, a fireplace, a bathroom, whatever it is that they want you to adjust. What you guys need to know, never ever adjust a subject, and you always adjust the comps to match the subject. If the comp is superior, you deduct. If the comp is inferior, you add. Use your little hand trick. Is that helpful? My life changed when I learned the hand trick. I said, dang it, where was that for pre-licensing? As we mentioned, some various things that we can adjust. Again, we just saw this list when we were talking about similar things that we're looking for. Now we're looking at the same list to talk about things that we can adjust. I will say the fewer adjustments we have to make, the better. The fewer adjustments, the better. I will also say that there's no two similar exact homes. Even in your cookiest cutters of neighborhood, you're still going to have some differences. So adjustments will be made. And please remember too, in practice, we're not doing the sales comparison approach. We are doing a CMA. We're not determining value. Again, your homework assignment and your test will give you the numbers that you need to make the appropriate adjustments. So if you were to go out to MLS and do a CMA, you may want to start, whatever neighborhood you're looking for. Let's see, this is Hastings Hill Road. This is Kernerville, Sedge Garden, Kernersville people recognize where I am. And I looked at an area for this property for comps. Now, obviously I got a lot more. The little red house means that it's sold. So I got a lot more here than what I need, right? But I got a good start. So I can use this information to help me figure out which one of these are most similar to the property that I'm trying to find the probable sales price for. So I drew my map, this particular subdivision. When we're doing CMAs for our sellers, particularly for our sellers, not only do we want to look at closed comps, but we also want to look at anything that might be active in this vicinity, in this map. Why do we care about active listings when we're trying to find the subject property's probable sales price?
Gives you insight into what the market is doing currently.
Exactly. It tells me what my competition is, doesn't it? So if you're sellers, I've learned, you guys, when it comes to sellers, it comes down to time versus money. You want to make a lot of money? I need some time. If you don't have a lot of time, you may not be able to do much money. Time versus money. So if your seller needs to sell, we need to study what our direct competition is and maybe price accordingly to get sold before the competition. Does that make sense? We don't want to go crazy above the competition because you got to think through the eyes of the buyer. If you're looking at a similar subdivision with similar homes and you have prices that are way off, in general, when we're comparing similar amenities, we're going to tend to go to the lower price. So help the sellers by studying our current competition. If a buyer was to drive into this neighborhood, what products would they have available for sale? I think another thing when we're talking with sellers that we need to look at is expired listings. Why do I care about expired listings?
For the same reason. If they didn't sell, then there's a reason they didn't sell. And a lot of that's probably price.
For whatever reason, a buyer wasn't willing to pay that price for that home. I don't know the reasons why. I don't know if they had offers. I don't know if the seller didn't accept them. But for whatever reason, they were unable to close at that price. I think expired listings help, particularly if you have a seller with unrealistic expectations. If you can show the seller, look, your neighbor tried to sell at this price that you think and nobody bought. We can use that to help, I hate to say lower their expectations, but ground their expectations, get them more down to reality. Again, you guys, please remember, to the seller, this is their home. To everybody else in the world, this is just a house. Does the seller naturally come into this with more value in the property than the buyers? Yeah, it's their blood, sweat, and tears went in this place. You remember when little Johnny fell right there and scraped his knee? They have memories, they have stories, they have feelings and emotions tied to this home. So naturally, they tend to have a higher value on it than somebody that's never walked in the front door before. So we can help them see, I appreciate the value you have for your home, but this is the market. This is what the market and expired listings tells us that nobody was willing to pay that. Anytime you're talking to a seller about price, we're getting back into a market where we're going to have price drops again. You may be on the market for 2 or 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, and we haven't sold yet. At some point, we may need to revisit the conversation about price. And before you suggest or recommend doing a price drop, let's do a current CMA. I'm going to do it before I list your property, but if we're going to talk price 3 months later, let's go ahead and generate a new one and see what the market looks like now, so we know where to position ourselves to hopefully get that thing sold. Generally speaking, when we're looking at our subject property and our comps, you can see here my subject is 5312 Stone Road, I guess we'll call it. It's got 1,500 square feet. Comp 1 is 530 Creekside. It's got a little less square feet. Comp 2 is 470 Ancourt. It's got a little more square feet. I have the sales prices of the comps, and then I have the adjusted sales price once we take into consideration of any seller paid concessions. Through the eyes of the seller, seller paid concessions come off of the purchase price. Yes, I sold your house for $129,000, but I had to pay $3,000. So technically I only got the $126,000. Does that make sense? So through the eyes of the seller, their concessions come off the price. So we have our adjusted sales prices of comp 1 and comp 2. If we were just studying these two comps, the only difference that we know of between the two comps is the square footage and the price, right? Comp 1 has 1,250 and it closed for $126,000. Comp 2 has 1,700 and it closed for $180,000. If we wanted to determine, or if the appraiser, whichever, wanted to determine the cost of a square foot, then they would have to find the difference between the square foot and the price. So the difference in the two prices is $54,000. Comp 2 is $180,000, comp 1 is $126,000. So the difference in the two prices is $54,000. The difference in the square footage is 485. Comp 2 has 1,700, comp 1 has 1,215. So we can take the difference in the price and the square footage, divide your price by your square footage, and we can determine that the square footage is $111 per square foot. What we're saying when we say $111 per square foot, we're saying every single square foot in this house costs $111. That square foot costs $111. That one over there costs $111. Every single square footage. And this is just the house, by the way. This is not the land. This is not the lot. This is just the structure, square footage of the property. So if we were to do that and figure these amounts, then we're going to make our adjustments. So now let's compare each comp to the subject. My subject has 1,500 square feet. Comp 1 has 1,215. Does comp 1 have more than or less than the subject? It has less than. Yes. So it is inferior to my subject, right? It has lesser quality, which means now my right hand is down by my side. So how do I adjust my comp to match my subject? I take the cost of the square feet, 111 per square foot, and I add to the sales price. I adjusted my comp to match the sales price. Then we look at our subject property of 1,500 square feet. and compare it to my closed comp with 17. Which one has more? Now it's the comp that has more. Find that difference. And how do I make my comp match? I deduct. I reduce the cost. So we took our 111 times the difference in square feet. To my comp 1, I added an adjustment of 31,635 to give me an adjusted sales price of 157. It closed for 129 minus our seller concessions, 126. That's what a buyer was willing to pay for it. But if I were to study this comp and adjust it to make it match my subject, now I have an adjusted sales price of the comp of 157,635. Same thing with the comp. I took my adjustment and now I have to deduct the difference in square footage. Again, for your test, for your homework assignment, they're going to give you that value. But this just kind of gives us a little bit of insight on how they come to that value, how they arrive at that value, how they determine that a square foot, they being the appraiser, by the way, determine that a square foot is worth $111. So now I've adjusted my second comp. So now I'm looking at a probable sales price, 157,635 to 157,800. I'm not sure what the other numbers are there, truth be told. Maybe that's another adjustment. Maybe I'm missing something. It's the 157 to 159.
Looks like they just adjusted them for even numbers.
There you go. Maybe that's it. Rounding up a little bit, have something up or down. Good round numbers are easier to interpret. That might be what it is. Yeah. So when we go to our listing appointment, of course, we're going to take our CMA, as we've already decided. But we have these numbers in front of us, our CMA in front of us, that we can go over with the seller. So I'm talking to the seller and I'm going to say, based on my research, I'd say your probable selling price is 157.5 to 159. That's what I think is going to sell for. Don't I want to list it for a little bit more than that to give us some wiggle room? So when we say probable sales price, what I'm saying is this is what I think a reasonable buyer would pay for this home. Let's list it for, I don't know what the answer to that is. It depends on the condition. It depends on the market. It depends on all sorts of things, right? This market we're coming out of, I could have said, shoot, let's put it on for 200,000 and see what happens, right? It probably would have sold. That's the kind of market we were just in. That's adjusting. But we can use that 157.5, 159 as our range. And again, now that we're inside the home, now we can actually see what the inside looks, the condition. Is it in good shape? Are the bathrooms and kitchen been updated? All that kind of good stuff. Your other homework assignment. I said we get through both of them today, so you guys have the week. Your other homework assignment is it up here? Yeah. Your other homework assignment is in Learn, Test, Pass. It's in the welcome section. And under the welcome section, you have CMA, homework, BRR, post 1, broker relationship and responsibilities, post 1. Is everybody good on where to access this? Again, if you forget after 5 o'clock today, just email me. We don't see each other again until next Saturday. Please don't wait till Saturday night to try to do this. I want you guys to do something fun on Saturday night. So if after we hang up today, you're not sure where to find any of these homework assignments, just reach out to me. So what we're doing with this homework, we're told to read through the materials, pick only the best comps, then make the adjustments below. So it gives us a subject property. And then we have 4 different comps, and then it gives us the values, the adjustments. So we don't have to figure that out. We just have to adjust. We're looking for 3. You could try all 4 and see which one's better than the other. You know, one of the fun things about these is my opinion could be different than yours. What I study could be different. Remember, the appraiser, that's all they do is offer their opinion of value. So we may have different answers. Again, you guys, I'm not looking for what I think is right or wrong. I'm just looking for you to show an effort. I'm looking at you to study your subject, the features of your subject property, and then study your comps and tell me what you think with your studying, your research would be a probable selling price for this property. This one is also due by 9 a.m. Sunday morning. I need both homework assignments in my inbox by 9 a.m. next Sunday. Is everybody good with that? I see some heads bobbing. Can I see all? Okay. All right. Thank you. You also have in Learn, Test, Pass, if you guys want to, there's kind of this blank. It sets it up. When you're doing your subject, I do suggest if you want to use this worksheet, you're welcome to, or if you want to, you know, break out your own Excel sheet or piece of paper. But I do suggest doing nice, neat rows and columns. So what are the features of your subject property? What are the features of each comp and the adjustments? I think a side-by-side comparison of the different features. So here's the lot, the quality, the age, the square footage, the bedrooms. And you're always studying. You're going to study the subject to comp 1, the subject to comp 2, the subject to comp 3. You always adjust the comps to match the subject. So we got to look at each comp as it relates to the subject property. Again, you're welcome to use this. This is also in the welcome section and Learn, Test, Pass. But you're under no obligation. You can rip a piece of paper out of your notebook and take a picture and send it to me, and I'll be happy. So just as long as I have some format, and pretend like I'm your seller. And at the end of this assignment, you're going to say, Julie, based on my research, I think your probable selling price is, and give me a range.
If a CMA problem comes on the test, would we be able to print this and have it so we can use it? Can organize the needs easier?
Yeah, that you guys will have scratch paper for your test, so you can draw it out on your blank scratch paper for your test and kind of do your different rows and columns that way if you wanted to. The one for your test isn't near as involved as this one. So the one for your test is just going to give you like 2 or 3 adjustments, a couple comps, right? But you'll have that scratch paper if you want to lay it out in rows and columns. Yep. Remember, you only get an hour for your test, so we can't get too detailed. We can't get too involved with these. But yes, you guys will have scratch paper. Questions? Okay. When you guys send me your assignments, I will confirm receipt, so you don't have to worry about, oh, did you get it? I'll let you know that I received it, so you know you're good. Everybody has my email? Julie, the real estate instructor, all one word, @gmail.com. Who is that chick? She is Julie, the real estate instructor, @gmail.com. That's how you can remember that. And half of you work with Lane, so if you can't find me, you know Lane can. Lane can track me down faster than anybody I've ever met. How does she do that? Another approach that the appraiser may take we're still in chapter 15 in your book. 15, starting on page 521, talks about the cost approach. I'm going to skip the cost approach because we don't talk about it in syllabus, but it's there. If you want to know more about it, that's where you can get that information. My hardback people, if we skip ahead to page 527, my digital users, we're still in 15. We're still under that same section. You'll just need to scroll down a little bit, go past the cost approach, and then you can find the income capitalization approach, also known as the direct approach. The income capitalization approach is used for properties that produce an income. The income capitalization approach is the best way for the appraiser to put value on a property for income producing properties. Apartment buildings, apartment complexes, even commercial, office parks, retail centers, shopping malls, if any of those are still around. So any property that produces an income. Commercial tends to use this, non-residential. And the thing that the income capitalization approach does is it looks at the net operating income and the capitalization rate. Net operating income is how much money you have after you've paid most of your expenses, most of your bills. We're going to do the breakdown, of course, do the math in just a second. Capitalization rate is the investor's rate of return. Rate of return says, how long before I get my money back? If I buy this income producing property, how long before it starts making me money? If I have any investors on the call, I'm sure you'll agree with me. I've always heard first couple years of owning that investment property, you're not making money. You may still be down in the red. You may be losing money. It takes time for these things to start making money, to start returning itself on your profit. And the capitalization rate can help the investor determine when they're going to start making their money. Another tool that investors may use is something called the gross rent multiplier, or the GERM, as I like to call it. This also is for 1 to 4 units. It kind of takes the idea of the sales comparison approach. And what it does is it compares recently sold or recently leased properties. It compares how much rent they're collecting to the sales price. So maybe you're an investor and you're thinking about purchasing an investment property, but you don't know operating expenses. You don't know exactly how much income it generates. You don't have the specifics. If you have the sales price and the expected rent that you're going to collect, that'll help the investor determine their gross rent multiplier. Generally, the rent that we're going to use to calculate this is annual rent. And what the GRM says is, if I collect annual rent of X amount and apply it to the sales price, how many years before I get my money back? If you want to look at monthly, then the GRM is going to tell you how many months before I get my money back. But usually investors, when we speak investor, we're talking annual figures. Investors like annual figures. So to help them determine that GRM, all we do is take the sales price and divide it by the expected rental income. Again, if it's annual rental income, the GRM is going to tell you how many years before I make that sales price. If it's monthly, it's going to tell you how many months before I get that sales price. So back to, that was a little sidestep. So back to our income capitalization approach, also known as our direct capitalization. We need to be able to help our investors determine their net operating income. Once we determine the net operating income, we can help them determine the value. But first, we have to find the net operating income. This is a formula that you need to know for next Sunday at about 3:30, 4 o'clock. Okay. There's 3 math problems on your test. One of them is this. So you take the gross income. The gross income is the max that this income producing property can collect. If I were to collect rent every month on time, every time, what's the max I can make? I tend to think of gross income as the dream. All my tenants, I'm full occupancy, all my tenants pay on time every time. How much can I make on this property? By the way, this one is solved annually. So I go all year, I never have a vacancy, I never have to collect. The gross income is my dream. From the dream, I deduct a vacancy if I have to take anybody to court for collection losses, for example. And that gives me my effective gross income, which I refer to as the reality. Gross income is the most I can make. Effective gross income is how much I'm actually collecting. Questions so far? The dream minus my vacancy gives me my reality, my effective gross income. From the effective gross income, I deduct my annual operating expenses. Annual operating expenses can be maintenance and janitorial fees. It could be property management fees, landscaping. What are the fees that I have to operate my business, operate this property? One thing that's not going to be included in operating expenses, in case you see a practice problem that tries to trip you up, one thing that will not be included in operating expenses
Taxes?
is your, not taxes, those are going to be included.
Oh.
You're close though, you're heading in the right direction.
Insurance?
Not insurance. What else is left when you pay the bank? When you make your mortgage payment?
Interest?
Interest.
Principal and interest. Principal and interest. Yep. So taxes and insurance are considered operating expenses. What's not considered an operating expense is your principal and interest payment, the payment you make to the bank. Remember, you pay part of your taxes and insurance as part of your mortgage payment, right? But they put that off to the side in an escrow account so they can pay those bills on your behalf when they come due. So it's the money we're paying directly to the bank, our principal and interest. So from your effective gross income, you deduct your operating expenses. And what you're left with is the net operating income. You guys need to know this formula. I cannot let you have this formula on your scratch paper when we start the test. When we start the test, your scratch paper has to be blank. Once you start the test, go nuts. But I can't have you bring in any formulas or anything with you to the test. Everybody good with me on that one? Okay. Best way I know how to memorize a formula, put it on a flashcard and just ask yourself over and over again. Write it down 25 times. If the repetition of helping writes you, just write it over and over and over again. If you don't know the formula, you don't know what to do with the numbers. If you don't know what to do with the numbers, that's a test question you may not get. So memorize the formula. Everybody have this piece of it. This is one step. One step is to find the net operating income. I said this was solved annually. Did I? Let me say it again just in case. So if they give you monthly rent, how do I make monthly rent annual? Times it by 12. Yep. I see your guys' mouth move. I think y'all are great when I see that. Okay, so we have our annual net operating income. Problem will ask you for value. It'll give you the capitalization rate. Once we find the net operating income, we divide that by our capitalization rate, and that will give us the value. Again, that's the basis of the income capitalization approach. The value of this property is loosely based on how much income does it collect. It's an income producing property. So let's go ahead and take our break. When we come back, I got a math problem for you guys, so we can make sure we work through one of these to get ready for Sunday. I apologize. I forgot to mention last break that we were going to do math. So now I'm going to say we're going to do math. So if you guys want to grab a calculator this time, I'm sorry. Please know for your test, I can't let you use your phone. So when I just now let you use your phone, that was an exception because that was my fault. But for test day is different. So if you have a basic calculator or something that's not your phone, please grab that while we're on break, and we'll do this income capitalization approach problem when we get back. So let's take 10, 356, and we'll come back and wrap out the weekend. 10 minutes. All right. Welcome back. So you guys have your formula right there, your formulas, I guess I should say, right there in front of you. Okay. All right. So here is a problem using the income capitalization approach. You'll first need to find the net operating income, and then you'll use that information to find the value dividing by the cap rate. So I'll give you guys, as much time as you need. Please tell me in a private chat when you have an answer, so I know when you guys are done or not. Okay, everybody ready? Is the anticipation getting to? No, I'm just kidding. All right, here you go. We'll go over it in just a second too. Yep, we'll go over it. I think. I'm going to minimize this for just a second. It's not going to go away. So if you guys are still working on it, you can still see it, but. It's how we learn, isn't it? We'll go through it and talk about this in just a second too. I just want to make sure everybody's had a chance to put some thought into it. All right. I think I've heard from everybody. If I did not hear from you, let me know right now. You don't have to tell me what you think the answer is. Did I hear from everybody? I think so. Okay. So let's go through this. Yay, there, yes. So let's go through this. First off, when you guys see a math problem, well, that's not accurate. When you see any test question, including math problems, I think the first thing you guys should do is just read the problem. Just read it. Don't try to answer it. Don't try to just read it and take it all in. So this problem tells us that there's a 10-unit, 4-story apartment building that utilizes the following rental schedule. There's 3 first-floor apartments that rent for $650 per month. There's 3 second-floor apartments that rent for $900. There's 3 third-floor apartments that rent for $1,100. The penthouse on the fourth floor rents for $1,800. Vacancy averages 5% per year. Operating expenses are $1,100 per month. The capitalization rate is 12%. Based on this information, what is the value of the building? It's going to ask for value. It's going to give you the cap rate, and it's going to give you the information you need to find the net operating income. So we're going to memorize that formula this week so we can solve this problem. And remember, I think the trick to remember this so far is that we work these problems annually. So I have a whole bunch of monthly figures right here, right? So eventually I got to convert everything to annually, and there's really no wrong way to do this. But the first thing we need to do is find what our gross income were. If I were to collect rent from all of these 10 tenants every month this year, what's the most I can make? So I have 3 units that rent for $650. So they rent for $19.50 a month. There's 12 months. So these first 4 units rent for $23,400 a year, or maybe you found the monthly for all 4 and then times by 12. No wrong way to do it. We'll probably get the same number at the end, right? So then we have 3 that rent for $900. So there's $2,700 per month, times 12 months gives us $32,400. I have 3 that rent for $1,100 per month, $3,300 per month. I want monthly, so we times by 12 to get $39,600 per year. And then we have the penthouse that rents for $1,800 per month, or $21,600 per year. Oops. So now that I have all of these annual rents, I add them all up. I get 23, 32, 39, and 21. So we have annual gross income of $117,000. Is that what you guys got? Okay, good. Again, maybe you figured out the monthly for all 12, added it up, and then times that whole thing by, no, you figured out the monthly, added it up, and then times that number by 12. No wrong way to do it. However your brain sees it, however you get to the gross income, this is our gross income. Any questions on how I got that number? My gross income. If I'm collecting rent from everybody this year, I'm collecting rent to the tune of $117,000. Vacancy averages 5%. So from our gross income, we need to deduct 5%, which leaves me with an effective gross income. I'm going to call it the EGI, effective gross income of $111,150. The dream is for me to make 117 this year, but in reality, because I have vacancies and collection losses, I'm actually only going to make $111,150. That's what we mean by the dream versus the reality. I have monthly operating expenses of $1,100. So if I take $1,100 times 12, that gives me annual operating expenses. So I deduct my annual operating expenses. To get a net operating income of $97,950. From my effective gross income, we deducted our annual operating expenses to get a net operating income of $97,950. Then the last step is to take my net operating income, divide it by my capitalization rate, which is 12%. So on a calculator, we take $97,950, divide it by 12%, and we get a value based on the income capitalization approach of $816,250. what we just determined, what the appraiser just determined in using the income capitalization approach. They studied the income, they studied the rent collected. And based on that, it helped us determine the value. This 12% is this investor's capitalization rate. Capitalization rate through the eyes of the investor is kind of subjective. Some of them have higher cap rates, some of them want lower cap rates. I think a lot of it depends on how many investment properties they have. If you're an investor that's just starting out, you may just start with one and all your eggs are in that basket, right? If that tenant doesn't pay, you got nothing that month. But as you grow your investment business and one day you have 20 income producing properties, you may not have as high as risk because now if somebody's not paying, you have 19 other properties to help carry that weight. So what's a good return? What's a good capitalization rate? I think ultimately it comes down to the investor and their particular needs and situations. Questions? Everybody good if I erase the red? You guys have this? Speak now if not. So the last little piece of this section, we've talked about sales comparison approach. We've talked about income capitalization. We skipped the cost approach. Sales comparison and income capitalization and cost approach are the appraiser's tools that they use to derive value. Now we can, loosely help our clients figure those amounts. But let's bring it home to us. If I'm not determining value, if I'm not actually doing a sales comparison approach, because I'm not an appraiser, what we're doing on our level is a CMA or a BPO. So a CMA is a comparative market analysis. A BPO is a broker market opinion. Once upon a time ago, they used to have a difference. Once upon a time ago, there was a distinction. Today, we pretty much just use them interchangeably. No matter what you call it, CMA or BPO, the commission rules and license law are the same. Historically, a CMA is what we did as part of our general brokerage duties for a buyer or a seller. When the seller asks you, how much should I list my home for? Or the buyer asks, how much should I offer? Historically, a BPO was set aside for something that we did for third parties. We're not trying to get the listing. We're not working with the buyer, but we've been hired to perform a service to offer our opinion about the price. A couple examples. A firm that I used to work with had a relocation company, and their relocation company was headquartered up in Connecticut. They have no idea about the Winston-Salem market. They have no idea what's going on up in Connecticut, what's going on down here. And so oftentimes they would call us and hire us to do a BPO to help them get an idea of the market here in Winston-Salem before they relocated one of their corporate employees. Provisional brokers, you guys cannot charge a fee to do a BPO for a third party. Can you do a BPO for a third party? Yes. You can't charge a fee. Only full brokers can charge a fee. Okay. Nobody can charge a fee to do a CMA when it's just part of our general brokerage duties. It's just part of our job. So there's some new laws that went into effect in 2012. You don't need to know that date. The laws that came in has said the full broker can charge a fee as long as it's not part of our general brokerage duties if you're doing it for a third party. The rule also says that we are not determining value. Anytime we need to determine value to originate a loan, refinance, or establish a line of credit, that's beyond our scope, guys. and the lender wants an opinion to determine value for originating a loan, they're not calling us, they're ordering an appraisal. That's the licensed appraiser's job. What we determine is probable sales price or probable lease price. We can do these for leasing as well.
Julie, because I've relocated myself several times, I'm curious as to what reason then would they be looking to get the BPO from, say out of state or what have you, if it's not for any of these purposes that are not allowed.
Yeah, one time I got called to do a BPO from a relocation company because they were moving. They currently lived in Winston, but they were relocating for their job. And I wasn't getting this listing. The seller was choosing who they were getting the listing, but the relocation company wanted to verify that it was being listed for a reasonable price. So,
Okay.
They let the seller choose their own agent, go through that process, but they just kind of wanted affirmation that the prices were in line. So they reached out to me. I think they paid me like $250. And it was basically doing a CMA and offering my opinion so they could make sure it was aligned with the contract price that, that the seller was hiring the agent with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they're just not familiar with our area, so they may reach out to us for help. I had a student the last time I taught this class, she gave me a better example of doing for a third party. She was still a provisional broker, so she couldn't do it. But she had an agent in her office, one that she was mentoring with and working closely with. And they got a call from an attorney to do BPO that was trying to settle a divorce decree. So we weren't necessarily selling the home, but the attorney needed a number to work with so they could settle that divorce. So they called the agent and said, will you give me your opinion? I'll pay you X amount. Again, my student couldn't because she was still a provisional broker. She was sitting in my class, but she was able to witness and watch her peer, her full broker, go through that. So I thought that was a pretty good, but I guess the attorney called 2 or 3 agents and said, I'll pay you for your opinion. So they knew how to proceed. Anytime that we're doing these things for a fee, we need to make sure that we're doing them properly. Remember, license law is 93A, commission rule is 58A. This is one thing that is covered by both license law and commission rule. You guys also have a really good resource, chapter 15 in your book that we're looking at right now. We're going to go through very briefly the commission rules, starting on page, where are we? Page 534, the various provisions of the commission rules. Again, we're going to go through them pretty quickly, but it gives us an idea of things that we need to follow, things that we need to expect. When you guys are called to do a BPO or CMA, particularly one for a fee, you need to head first straight to license law and commission rule and make sure you're doing it in accordance to the law and the rule. So the very first thing that they tell us is that our CMAs and BPOs have to be in writing. No avoiding that. We can't have an oral conversation. They must be in writing. We should have a report that we can provide to the seller. You guys going to keep a copy of the reports for your records? Everybody shake your head yes. Because what do we document? Everything. So you give a copy to the seller or buyer or the attorney, whomever you're doing it for. Keep one for yourself. Have that in writing. Starting on page 534, again, we're looking at rule 58A.2202. Provision A says that when we're performing for a fee, we have to comply with the rules. So if you're charging somebody to do this, you need to follow the commission rule. We should only accept an assignment to do a BPO for a fee if we know what we're doing. We have to have knowledge of the market where the property is located. We needed to have access to the sales data. If you're not a member of MLS, it'd be awfully hard to do a BPO or a CMA. So we have to have the tools available to do it. And we need to have experience or knowledge in that area. As agents, we're the experts of our market or the market. So we need to have experience in this particular market location. Dot 2202 says any opinion should be free of any influence from any interested parties. We can't ask the seller for their input. We shouldn't ask the buyer for their input. Again, you guys, value is in the eye of the beholder. So if you're asking the seller what's your home worth, they're going to have a higher value than the buyer. The buyer's going into this just looking at the price tag, right? So they're going to tend to have, so we're doing this independently without help from them. The broker performing the CMO or the BPA for a fee needs to go examine the home. We're going to look at the outside. We're going to look at the neighborhood. We're going to drive up and down the street. We're going to find the amenities nearby. We're also going to go inside. What kind of condition is the inside? Is it in good shape? Is it in need of a lot of repairs or updates? So we're going to use actually putting our eyes on the property to help us arrive at our opinion, our BPO or CMA. We're going to go inside and out. E says when we're analyzing comps, we need to look at least 3, minimum of 3. And we make adjustments to the comps only. Never ever adjust the subject. Remember your hand trick. Again, I think that'll come in handy for your homework assignment. It'll also come in handy next Sunday. Woo, I must be in a good mood today. I don't know. Understand the real estate commission understands, they acknowledge that we don't have the same level of experience as an appraiser does. They know that we can't make these adjustments. Again, I have no idea what the going rate of a bathroom is, or a bedroom, or a fireplace. That's why we're looking for similar comps, things that we don't have any adjustments, and know the adjustments that we are making don't necessarily have value on them. We're getting general ideas. Again, if you want to know the value of a bedroom, call an appraiser, or better yet, go to appraisal school. Get your appraiser's license. Dot 2202 also says, in our written BPO or CMA, the following needs to be addressed. We need to have a description of the comps. What's the address? What are some of the features, the physical conditions of the comps? What are the adjustments did we make to the comps? Do we adjust the comp down, or do we adjust the comp up? And if so, how much and why? We need to make a note of the local market conditions. Is it a buyer's market or a seller's market? Are we in a distressed market with lots of foreclosures and short sales? So identify your local market. If we're using closed comps more than 6 months old, why do we select those comps? Is it because we're in a market with low inventory, thus not as many closings, so we don't have as many to choose from? We just need to explain why. And then we need to describe the methods that we use. Are we basing our analysis off of the sales comparison approach or the income capitalization approach? As we mentioned earlier, we state our CMA BPO probable sales price in a range. When we state it in a range, if the higher figure exceeds the lower by more than 10%. In other words, if your range is greater than 10%, why? The range should be tight. If we're using similar properties that recently closed nearby, again, the fewer adjustments that we have to make, the better. So when our range, our high to low, there's a difference of 10%, we need an explanation of why. Again, what we just looked at, rule dot 2202, is when we're performing these things for a fee. You guys can't do this yet. Some of you can do it next Monday, not this Monday, but next Monday, once you finish the class and you drop your provisional status. But while you're still having that provisional status, you guys can't do it for a fee. Not yet. You're close, but you can't do it just yet. The rule also says that we keep all completed CMAs and BPOs for how long? How many years? Same amount of years we keep everything else. Everything for 3 years, keep those records. No matter if you're doing it for a fee, if you're doing it for a potential seller that never hires you, hire somebody else. If you're doing it for a buyer whose offer never gets accepted. Anytime you do one of these things, may it be for a fee or for part of your general brokerage duties, keep it for 3 years. So what about doing a CMA for out a fee? Well, if you're doing it for free, for no additional charge, anybody can do it. BP, broker, doesn't matter. And again, you guys, we cannot charge a fee when this is part of our general brokerage duties. When your seller says, should we reduce the price? What do you think? You can't say, well, I'll tell you if you cut me a check for $200. That's just part of my job, is to do the CMA. When your buyer says, oh my gosh, Julie, this is the dream house. How much should I offer? Well, I'll show your opinion if you send me a cash app for $50. I can't say that, you guys. That's just part of my job. If you're doing it for without a fee, the commission does expect these things to be performed in a competent manner, keeping any opinions or undisclosed conflict of interest. Again, seller's opinion and buyer's opinion has absolutely nothing to do with the results we get from the CMA. Also, like we said earlier, I learned very early in doing my CMAs, I could make this thing say whatever I want to. But that doesn't mean I'm performing it in a competent manner. There is so much training out there. My Winston-Salem Board of Realtor people, where are my Winston-Salem Board of Realtor members? Some of you are members of Winston-Salem. About once a quarter, Winston-Salem Board of Realtors will offer CMA training. So you guys keep your eye out on your emails from your local Board of Realtors, wherever you are. Prior to Zoom world, they were doing them in person at the Winston-Salem Board of Realtors, and they were having an actual appraiser come in and teach that class. It was very interesting. I'm not sure what we're doing now that we're all on Zoom, or is that what they call it? PC post-COVID. I'm not sure what's happening now, but I know they're doing them. I just don't know who. But either way, I'm sure it's a really good experience and get good information. Your firm may offer training. Your BIC may want to sit down with you when you go through these, a seasoned agent. But please just don't attempt these at first on your own. Have somebody. And guys, even after all these years, I mean, every once in a while I'll get stumped on one, or I may have a different opinion from the seller. So, you know, even I consider myself experienced, but I'm still not above calling and asking somebody for help. I can call my BIC and say, can you look at these numbers with me? Can you look at this with me? Because sometimes two heads are better than one. Sometimes two sets of eyes are better than one to get through these. Regardless if you're doing them for a fee or not, basically our duties are the same. The rules are the same. perform them competently. They must be in writing. Save it for 3 years. The law of agency waves in. They remind us we have a duty to serve our client with that reasonable skill, care, and diligence. That absolutely applies when we're preparing a CMA or a BPO. And anything that we come across when we're preparing these things that might influence somebody's decision, it may not show up on the report, but if we find something that makes a little red flag go up, we need to disclose our findings, disclose what we find. We're expected to have the competencies needed to properly perform these things, properly prepare these things. There's different skill sets for residential versus commercial. There's different things to consider. Obviously, this class is heavy focused on residential. If you're going into commercial, you need that training, you need that education. The best way I know to tell you to get into commercial is meet up with somebody. Find a friend, find somebody that's willing to take you under their wing. Full submersion. I think that's the best way to do commercial. It's a totally different beast, is what I've always heard about commercial. So just make sure you're proceeding with caution. And as you guys can imagine, the Real Estate Commission can take disciplinary action if you don't do these things competently. You could go down for misrepresentation or omission. You could go down for not performing it in a competent manner. It's one of the duties we owe the public, is to act worthy and competent. Bottom line, if you're not comfortable doing the assignment, don't accept it until you get that training, until you get that knowledge. Performing for a fee. Again, need to make sure the broker is qualified, non-provisional broker, good standing, active license, full broker is what I'm saying. You have that knowledge and expertise. You know what you're doing. Disclosing what you find, disclosing what you learn. The commission feels we need to have this knowledge, not just of the property, we're studying the property, but knowing your market, knowing the area, knowing the conditions of the market. Again, if you don't have access to MLS, it's awfully hard to do one of these. So do you have access? Are you a member of MLS? And if you're doing it for a fee, it's not just, do you have a provisional status? Do you have experience? So once you guys drop your provisional status, if you've still never done one, maybe you may not want to consider doing one for a fee right away until you get that experience. We're identifying the assignment. What's the subject property? Studying that subject property. Gathering your comps. Again, sales comparison approach. The closest thing we have is that CMA. Studying those close comps. Some are going to be better than others. Some are going to be similar, more similar to the subject than others. We can help by looking at the gross rent multiplier, or sales price divided by the rent. the income capitalization approach for properties that produce an income. And again, bottom line, what we report, the words that we say are probable sales price or probable lease price. Do not say value unless you're an appraiser. Anybody ever thought about the appraisal world? Maybe. I think it's interesting. I don't know. That may be my next career. We'll see. Gosh, I got to go back to school. I do better on this side of the desk. I don't do well on y'all's side of the desk. But there's a class and you got to get a license. You got to pass a test. Also, to be an appraiser, you got to do X amount of hours of like a mentorship. So I think that's one of the bigger challenges that appraisers find, is finding somebody to take them under their wing that you can follow. But I'm telling you, the last appraiser I talked to said, we're all getting old. We need some young people in here. So that may be something for some of us to consider. When they start retiring out, somebody's got to take their place. We'll always need appraisers. Just to briefly mention pages, where are we? 542 and 543. Just kind of mentions things that the report should have. I think we've already talked about this, so we're just kind of reviewing a little bit, going through the book. So there's our subject property. What's the interest in the property? Why are we doing this? Are we doing this for a seller? Are we doing this for a buyer? Are we doing this for a third party? What's the interest? What's the purpose? That would be who we're doing it for: buyer, seller, third party. Who it was the assignment requested by? Why were we hired to do this job? Do we have any interest in the property? Local market conditions, what's going on today, the date that we performed it. You need your name, license number, and signature as the preparer. If you're doing it for a fee, the company you're listing for, and then a disclosure statement, which you can actually find on page 543. My digital users, we are still under that BPO CMA. I think we're near the end of that section. So my digital users, if you want to go down to the bottom, might be easier to come up just a little bit. But 543, our disclaimer statement says, this opinion is not an appraisal. The market value may not be used in lieu of an appraisal. If an appraisal is desired, the services of a licensed or certified appraiser shall be obtained. This opinion may not be used by any party as a primary basis to determine value of a parcel interest in the real property for a mortgage loan origination, including first and second mortgages, refis, and equity lines of credit. You guys all see that? So we need to include that disclosure. Disclaimer. Final thoughts. Real Estate Commission expects us to perform these things competently. I think we've kind of driven that point home. I hope. Article 6 is your license law. I think you guys should jot these down, so when you do get out and start doing them for a fee, you know where to go. Start with refreshing yourself on the license law and commission rule. Various appraisal acts and approaches. And then there's a sample BPO or CMA. Questions? All right. So now we can go back into Unit 9. Isn't this fun how it hops around? So we can go back into Unit 9. And the whole reason we did that little side step was so we can properly advise our seller on the listing price. So by helping them doing our CMAs to help them determine probable sales price. Again, that's kind of our jump start to help us determine a reasonable listing price. I think generally speaking, we can list it for more than the probable sales price. How much more? It depends on the market. Is it a hot market? Is it a slow market? Is it a buyer's market? Is it a seller's market? Do the sellers need a quick sale? Time versus money. Do they need a quick sale? Have they done updates? We can help have conversations with the seller about the current market conditions. Let them know what they can expect when you submit that listing. 6 months ago, we were telling our sellers to get out of the home, hang on to their hat. We'll probably be under contract tomorrow. Things are slowing down. Those expectations are no longer. So what can the sellers expect today? Well, things are still happening fast. You may still get multiple offers. You may still get more than asking price. I did not just say that went away. But help your sellers understand that market condition and again, what they may be able to expect. Have a conversation with your sellers about their needs and desires. Time versus money. How fast do you need to sell versus how much money do you want to make? We are looking at our listing agreement next weekend. We will look at that first thing on Saturday. I chose to skip that today so we'd have time to go through the homework assignment. So we'll have to go back and look at our listing agreement on Saturday. And when we see our listing agreement, we're going to see that we have a place to actually ask the seller, what are your approximate balances on your first mortgage, second mortgage, third mortgage? So make sure that when we do come up with an adequate listing price, is it enough to cover everything they need to close? I wish I could tell you that all sellers get money from closing. And that's not always the case. Sometimes they have to owe, sometimes they have to bring money, and we need to find out if they can afford to sell. And then discuss our needs with them too. Oops. Are there certain things we need them to be aware of? Certain things about our marketing, for example. Do I need to do an open house? What can we do to help market this property? I need commission. So we need to have this conversation. If I sell your house for X amount, can you afford to pay me X amount? One big thing we need to do with our sellers is help them estimate their net. Do you think a common question from sellers is, when you sell my house, how much money am I going to make? Do you think that comes up? All the time. That's what they care about, right? What can you put in my pocket? Guys, if I sell their home for $200,000, they're not going to get a check for $200,000. They need to deduct all their mortgages, their liens, their outstanding balances. They need to deduct any agreed upon costs for repairs, closing costs, our commission. So by helping them figure out their net, they may be determining if they can afford to sell. Some people may have an X amount that they have to receive before they can sell. Another thing that we will look at next Saturday is called an estimated net to seller worksheet. It's a form provided to us that we can sit down with the seller and say, if I sell your house for X amount, this is about how much I think I can put in your pocket. And the form is pretty cool. It's breathed new life with this multiple offer world because it actually has a place to look at 3 different prices. So we can also use this form, not only help them determine their net, when we start getting these multiple offers in, we can say, if you accept this offer, these are the terms, this is how much you'll net. If you accept this offer, if you accept that offer. So we can help them break it down into language that they understand. And what do sellers understand? How much are you going to put in my pocket when this is over? That's exactly right. They understand the money. So we'll look at that worksheet, seller net worksheet, next weekend as well. The other thing we may help the sellers determine or calculate is net profit. Now, there's a couple different formulas here that we're going to go through. You're not going to need to know the math for your test, but I do think it's a good idea that we have an understanding of the different formulas. So the first thing we can help the seller calculate is their adjusted sales price. What did you pay for the home back in the day when you bought it? So if we take the sales price and deduct their closing expenses, that gives us the seller's adjusted sales price. I said that backwards. I'm so sorry. Erase what I just said. Forget it. Adjusted sales price is how much they sell it for. How much did you sell it for today? I apologize. So if I sell your house today minus your closing expenses, that gives us our adjusted sales price. To have everybody? Sorry about that. So adjusted sales price, what we're selling it for today. Compare that to what they bought it for back in the day. Here we go. So what was their purchase price whenever they bought it? And what did they add to it? Their added closing expenses, again, when they bought it. So adjusted sales price, looking at what we're selling it for today. Adjusted cost, what did we pay for it back in the day? When I look at the difference between the two, I help the seller determine their net profit or their loss. What they sell it for today is hopefully more than what they bought it for. That's how they get a net profit. So adjusted sales price, the difference in the adjusted sales price and their adjusted costs gives us their net profit or net loss. Another thing that may come up with sellers when we're talking about price and making sure they can afford to sell, if we find out that the seller is underwater, we may want to consider talking to them about a short sale. Short sales are easier on the homeowner than a foreclosure. Short sales are more forgiving than a foreclosure. First off, a foreclosure will stay with your credit history for 7 years. Short sale only follows you for 3. There also tends to be less negative results in a short sale than in a foreclosure. So if you find out your seller's underwater, you may want to encourage them to reach out to their lender and discuss the possibility of doing a short sale. So let's talk about what a short sale is. Anybody done one of these yet? You heard me say yet. They're coming, y'all. Hang on. So let's talk first off about what a short sale is. A short sale actually consists of 3 pieces. First piece says that the seller's underwater. The proceeds of the sale are not enough to pay off all their liens. They owe more than what the home is worth. And the seller doesn't have sufficient assets, liquid assets, to make up the difference. What do I mean by liquid assets? How quickly can you convert it to cash? Yep. How quickly can you convert it to cash? So if they drain their savings account and sell their stocks and bonds, do they have enough to make up that difference? And then the third piece is we have to get all of the lien holders' approvals. So everybody they owe money to has to agree to accept less than what they're owed and convey the title. If I can't get all the lien holders on board, then we can't do a short sale. So how these things work, buyer and seller negotiate the offer like they always would. Buyer makes an offer, they negotiate, we agree on a price and all the terms, and we go under contract. Once we have a signed contract in our hand, then the seller sends that contract to the lien holders so they can work on their approval process. Lien holders are not going to start their thing until they have a bona fide contract in their hand. When we advertise, and we'll talk about advertising, when we market and advertise, what we're advertising is a potential short sale. I have no idea if the lien holders are going to accept this or approve it or not. You guys may have heard these things are known for the length of time that they take. When we talk about short sale, I'm not talking about time. We're saying it's a short sale because the seller is short on funds. On average, they say you can expect 6 months for these things to pan out. I've done 2 short sales, both as a buyer's agent. One was about 4 months. The other one was 11 and a half. So I guess I'm average, my 6 months, but that's all you're doing. The name of the game is patience. That's all you're doing is just sitting there waiting on the lien holder's approval. I hate to end on the gloom note of a short sale. Blah. But they're out there and they're back and they're coming back. So I am going to end here today. So let's talk. Don't go anywhere just yet. What's next weekend look like? So we'll pick up. We got a little bit more to say about short sales. We're awfully close to done working with sellers. Saturday morning, the big highlight's going to be looking at our listing agreement. Once we're done working with sellers, we're going to switch gears and work with buyers. So we're going to talk about the specifics of them. That section isn't near as long. But again, the highlight of that is going to be looking at our buyer's agency agreement. After that, the next section is dual agency and then property management. And then we're wrapping it up. We'll still have some material to cover on Sunday morning because your test is 1 hour on Sunday. So we'll probably start your test about, my goal is to get us started about 3:30, maybe get us in a little bit so we can get done a little bit sooner, but we got to cover the material. I will also do a review for us on Sunday before the test so we can kind of fine tune some of this information and what you need to do to get ready for that test. Don't forget, both of your homework assignments are in my inbox by 9 a.m. Sunday morning. We will go over those on Sunday as well. I encourage you guys to look at chapters 8 and 9 this week, flip through. If we haven't talked about it yet, we probably will. Go through Learn, Test, Pass, take some practice tests. That'll help get you ready. And the biggest thing I want you guys to remember is if you're studying this week, if you're doing the homework assignments, and if you have any questions whatsoever, do not hesitate to reach out to me. This is why I'm here. So before y'all feel the need to start banging your head on the table, don't do that. Call me. That's what you got me for. Fair enough? Everybody promise me? All right. I want to see you guys on Saturday with like bruises on your foreheads, right? So call me first. I will help you get through it. It's 5 o'clock. Y'all have a great, enjoy the rest of your weekend, what's left. Have a good week. Y'all go sell a house this week too, so we can talk about it on Saturday. And you like that? Cool. And I will see you guys next Saturday at 9 a.m. sharp.
All right, have a good week.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank you.